Good afternoon. My name is Noah Ross Patrick, and today I will be presenting a short PowerPoint slide over The Big Short Inside the Doomsday Machine, authored by Michael Lewis. Firstly, I will be explaining what caused or led up to the 2008 financial crisis, the fraud that was behind that crisis, and how, in hindsight, it could have been prevented. Lastly, I would like to highlight some of the key individuals that are found within this novel and the major takeaways that I got from the reading. Before we go further into this presentation, I thought it would be imperative to sit down and ask ourselves, what exactly was the 2008 financial crisis? And basically, it was mainly caused by a collapse in the housing market. Fraud started to occur in these systems because of profit-driven incentives and a weak regulation across the whole financial system. And the reason why this matters is because it caused a system-wide economic impact or failure for millions of people, to the point where it even started to branch off to a worldwide economic epidemic. Onward to a brief synopsis of the book itself. It focused on the housing bubble that we started to see effects of in the early 2000s, where basically subprime mortgages were being used and issued to high-risk borrowers pretty much on purpose, and they were set up to where they couldn't even repay them, and the lenders actually knew this. These loans were packaged into complex financial products, but were sold to the borrowers as safe investments, even though they carried a significant financial risk for the parties involved. This eventually led to the collapse of the whole financial system in 2008, while only a small group of investors recognized the problem, which are some of the characters that I will introduce later in the presentation. The three most significant characters to this story included Michael Burry, Steve Eisman, and Greg Lippmann. Michael Burry was one of the first to recognize the housing bubble that I mentioned during the previous slides, and he actually bet against it using credit default swaps. Steve Eisman also identified this corruption, and he aggressively shorted mortgage-backed securities, which helped mitigate the issue as well. And finally, Greg Lippmann was a trader who helped popularize these strategies and encouraged others to bet against the market itself. As far as the key concepts of this novel go, you could really make 20 slides, but here are a couple that stood out to me, and the main ones I want to go over were the subprime mortgages, where the high-risk loans were given to borrowers who couldn't even actually end up repaying them. These loans were bundled into mortgage-backed securities and then repackaged into CDOs to appear safer. And it's crazy looking at it in hindsight. And lastly, the credit default swaps then therefore allowed the investors to bet against these failing loans, similar to how insurance would work on default. Here's a slide showcasing the biggest fraud and failures that were introduced through the literature. The crisis involved risky loans being knowingly sold to unqualified borrowers. Rating agencies had multitudes of conflicts of interest, and as the book stated, the rating agencies had no incentives to say no. And in addition to this, a lack of transparency in the financial products ultimately led to a system-wide failure across almost all institutions. One of my favorite things about forensic accounting and reading a book such as this is recognizing what led to all of these things and fraudulent activities, and then instantiating prevention or preventative measures with the hindsight that we have and what we've learned from these past mistakes. And the three big, I have a couple listed here, but the three big ones that I want to draw attention to that would have helped prevent this are the independent rating agencies and the independence would cause fewer conflicts of interest, obviously. A greater transparency and stricter lending standards would have helped reduce risky behavior across the board. And lastly, a stronger regulation of derivatives and accountability for institutions would have helped limit the damage that these risky loaners would have caused on the financial economy. The big three key takeaways that I got from this novel was that incentives drove bad behavior across the financial system as a whole. This lack of regulation enabled this risk to even happen to begin with, and the warning signs, like as they appeared early, they were just ultimately ignored, which led to the crisis as a whole. And if we use some of these preventative measures that I mentioned earlier, this could have all been averted. And this was shown proof by the three main characters who pretty much foresaw this and saw where the market was going based on all of these aforementioned constituents. In conclusion, it is safe to say that this crisis was overall preventable and only driven by ethical failures and a lack of transparency. Lastly, stronger oversight could have helped to reduce the overall impact that this had on our nation's economy. As the book suggests, the truth was hiding in plain sight, meaning the warning signs were there, but ultimately ignored. Thank you. That is the end of my presentation.